Well, howdy, y'all. Unky T here. Now, it's been a little while since I've talked to y'all, so I just thought I'd pop out here and let you know what's going on with my life in the world. First of all, in regards to the impending lawsuit I'm having with the communist YouTube rat bastards, well, first of all, that's a no-go. I have talked to so many lawyers that I am tired of talking to lawyers, and that you'd think that wouldn't take very long, but it took a long time. It seems to me that the lawyers don't want to be first to do anything, but they sure as hell will fight tooth and nail to be second. I'm just saying, it's just that nobody wants to be responsible for nothing, but they want somebody else to go out ahead of them, do all the work, and then they just get the free lunch after the fact. Well, so I've decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for Trump to go out and do his thing, and then I'll get a lawyer who will be more than happy to go after it once all the appeals have already done. Because at some point, these commie bastards have to pay the piper. And there's too damn many people just rolling over and taking it, and I'm not going to be one of them. And now, on a second note, now that I've been not doing so many videos and spending all my time doing that, I've had a lot more time to study up on the Bible and to study online and see different perspectives of different groups and philosophers and what have you. And I run across this group of people. Very interesting perspective on how to use the Bible to interpret the Bible. It's not unusual. It's actually quite good. I find them very fascinating. These fellas are called the God Culture. That's the name of their channel on the YouTube. And the communists ain't taking them down, oddly enough. So even though they're satanic rat bastards, they let people still preach of God. That's good to see. For now. Anyway, I'm going to put a link to their channel in my description down at the bottom, down under there. And I highly recommend y'all go check them out if you want to know interesting things like they've proven that the Garden of Eden was in the Philippines. Yeah, believe it or not. And there's sound evidentiary proof in the Bible and in Jubilees. So just another example. They have over 300 videos on the YouTube, and every one of them is fascinating. I highly recommend y'all go check them out. Anyways, what I've done here is, with their permission, I am going to upload one of their videos so you can have an idea of what they're talking about. And if you like what you see, go to their channel and please patronize their channel. They deserve the support. You can like them, you can share them, subscribe, and do all that stuff for these guys because they're doing a lot of hard work, and it's all for you and me. So please do that. And without further ado, here's their video.
Something new was being unleashed on the world. Though at war in World War I, that dry run was about to become a full reality of true war around the world on a greater scale. Yahuwah watched in anguish as his earth was being ripped apart. Something Revelation prophesies of a special judgment for those who destroy the earth. He didn't forget. We know the great eagle head led this effort in bringing about the First World War and now the Second. This time, knowing its end was near, she begins to transfer her power to the second head, still led by the same demon principality, Gog of Magog. The Japanese Admiral Yamamoto exclaimed, "I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant." Indeed, the second head was now fully awakened and would become empowered to continue the plan of the Prince Demon. Roosevelt knew this, as he called this the day that would live in infamy, and warned Hitler should beware of the fury of an aroused democracy. These powers, all from the same eagle body, controlled by the same demon, whose policy is to be the order out of chaos. The American people, completely unaware of the gravity of the true power behind this effort, begin making weapons and prepare their men, even their women and children, for war, as they participate in the rise of a power they will never control, but it will control them. This was no democracy, as demons don't have such. It was the plan all along. A drastic change and a transfer of power on an epic scale was underway. America celebrated its victory, yet did not know what it even represented. This would begin to become evident, yet an entire media would pound the war drums continually from this point forward. A war machine was born, which would not settle for anyone standing in its way. It was the new America, the new economy, the new way of life, justified by an ignorant media choosing not to see the reality. But the next president did. In his final address to the nation in 1961, having served his terms, President Dwight D. Eisenhower would expose a power unimaginable, which many would dismiss as it was simply too large and too evil to be believed. A president knew firsthand, as an eyewitness, what was rising was the purest form of evil that would not allow America to ever have its own nation, but would use it for its purposes for a time. He said,
"In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process."
That's a president, not a conspiracy theorist. Nor was Ezra the prophet who predicted this would happen. Nor was JFK, who fought this same power he said relied on covert means or banking and finance. Did he lose his life in that battle 6 months later? For the second eagle head was now rising as the first would disappear. The United States of America. Sad but true, my friends, for many of us. When I was growing up in a fairly patriotic area of America, patriotism was ingrained. American values, the American dream were instilled. The good old days of ignorance. For there is no American dream in a society that owns you, essentially. One that demands your service and takes most of your hard-earned American dream for itself, leveraging that into so much debt. The entire world does not have enough currency to pay it off. And what is their number one expenditure? The military. Oh, you get to choose your position in slavery. You get to even decide where to live. But you do not get to live free of excessive taxation. You know, the reason that the U.S. broke away from Britain in the first place? Far beyond what anyone ever bothers to figure out. An accountant did so, and the number is staggering, but we'll let you find that out. Where does it all go? The day before 9/11, the Secretary of State, Donald Rumsfeld, gave a speech declaring that $2.3 trillion, That's with a T. Disappeared and could not be accounted for by the Pentagon. Just gone. The magnitude of such negligence. I mean, how did he keep his job for 1 minute after announcing such? And how did the president either, for that matter, because they should all have been fired? It can only be theft on the grandest scale the world has ever seen. Yet, the next morning, this news would be buried in the news cycle for good. Oddly, by the same force who benefited from the theft. That money came from you and I. And that force will never take enough. They'll never have enough. They want more and more and more. When we go back to 1961, the end of Eisenhower's terms, 8 years, whom we heard from in his own words, that was him speaking. He was elected in the same year the great head, the British Empire, fell. He was part and parcel to the very transfer of Britain's way of life. That's why I wanted to play his words. Under demonic control. The war machine had conquered a quarter of the earth, and it was now installed in the U.S. This is what he was warning, and he called it the military-industrial complex. He's the expert. I mean, that's not a theory. He was president, even rising through military ranks. And that was fact, and it still is. The defense industry reaches far beyond manufacturers and permeates the entire country at every level. And again, listen to his full speech. As Eisenhower says, they had already infiltrated at the local levels even at his time. He knew it was an entity that was in control now, though he likely did not completely understand it. And he warned it would remain so if folks did not understand it and awaken. Well, they did not, but instead continued to herald the very demon in what they call patriotism. The second head was awakened and in control with the full weight of Britain's former military power behind it. The U.S. was set up to rule. If you are an American, you should know that the economic boost we saw in that age was not for our benefit. Sure, perhaps you or your grandparents or your parents benefited, but it was for the benefit of the industrial military complex, who then came back through taxation and other ways, taking that money right back out, including theft, right out of the Pentagon. By their own admission, in their own words, from the Secretary of State himself. Now, that was temporary as far as you and I are concerned, and not the intention nor the purpose. The very next president, JFK, also identified them and opposed them, and lost his life in assassination. No, this video is not about who assassinated JFK. We will not be proving that. Don't worry. But he said we are opposed by a force that operates by covert means, or in other words, bankers and debt. Britain's war machine from the Rothschild banking family. That same system was in control and has only tightened that control today. Let's go to Esdras and see how Ezra identifies this second head. First, remember, we have well proven, and many others have as well, the progression of Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's statue as well as his vision of the four beasts, which began in his time in Babylon, and he saw the rise of Medo-Persia as well. Then this world empire was conquered by Greece, and then Rome. Rome became something else, iron mixed with miry clay, in Turkey in 324 AD under Constantine the not-so-great, where the seat of Satan is, and the synagogue of Satan operated according to the book of Revelation. and was succeeded by the longest-lasting empire, just as Ezra predicted, the Byzantine Empire. This lasted about 1,000 years and was followed by the British Empire, the largest empire in history, as Ezra's first and largest eagle head perfection in prophecy. The hidden power, which was asleep, awoke and ravaged the earth for about 500 years, but now it falls, and its power handed to the second head attached to it, the United States of America. Open your books of 2nd Esdras, and let's return to chapter 11, verse 29. And when they so thought, behold, there awaked one of the heads that were at rest, namely, it was in the middle. We covered this. For that was greater than the two other heads. The British Empire, the perfect fit. But what we're looking for this time is we're pulling out the characteristics of these other heads. They're smaller than the British Empire. And then I saw that the two other heads were joined with it. Now, these two other heads are not just part of the same body. Understand, they rise from the power of the British Empire, which is handed to them. Gog of Magog doesn't let all that conquering, stealing, killing, and destroying go to waste, you know. In fact, speaking for him, good old Rahm Emanuel actually said, "Never let a crisis go to waste." President's right-hand man said that. That's disgusting. Indeed, that is Gog of Magog's philosophy. These are connected, and the U.S. was not just founded by Britain. We'll cover that. Verse 33, And after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. So, in 1952, as its leader died in pain upon his bed, as Ezra predicted, the British Empire disappeared. It certainly wasn't an empire when it only held Hong Kong still. That's just not even a remotely accurate characterization. Again, we still have the UK with us today, but the British Empire is gone from the world in power. 34. But there remain two heads, that's where we're going, which also in like sort ruled upon the earth. Now rule just like the British Empire. Understand that. And over those that dwelt therein. Now, Ezra doesn't say much about this one, but enough that we can determine who this is. However, here is what happens to the second head. Let's get there. And I beheld, and lo, the head upon the right side devoured it that was upon the left side. The third head devours the second head. Again, it will likely remain as a nation, but it will lose its power, which will be absorbed by this third and final head, which we will cover in the next video. Fast forward to the angel interpretation, chapter 12, and we'll pull out the markers that are there regarding these final two heads. Verse 23. In his last days shall the Most High raise up three kingdoms. No, they are not his. Understand that. But he will allow them to rule. God does not bless these nations. He allows them to prosper for a time through their theft, but that is not him blessing them. Understand that. And renew many things therein, and they shall have the dominion of the earth, and of those that dwell therein with much oppression, above all those that were before them. Therefore are they called the heads of the eagle. For these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, and that shall finish his last end. Now see, just as Satan was actually the angel of death in Egypt. Yes, that was Satan. That wasn't Yahuwah. Satan was accomplishing Yahuwah's judgment. But so are these empires in the same way. He does not condone what they do, exhibiting the fruits of Satan. No. And led, of course, by the prince demon. He allows it, though, for a season, as his judgment will come to pass. That season will end, however, as we will cover how he feels about these heads, and he will consume them as they are not his. 26. And whereas you saw that the great head appeared no more, it signifies that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. 1952, the end of the great head, the British Empire. 27. For the two that remain shall be slain with the sword. For the sword of the one shall devour the other, but at the last shall he fall through the sword himself. So again, we know their end. Why is America not found in prophecy? It will not be a world power in the end. Yes, the country may still be there, but it will not have the power that it has had for the last century. That's why. It will fall from power, according to Ezra. Sad, but that's truth. Many would say this is already happening today. Let's break down the criteria set forth by the prophet Ezra. The great head falls, and the second head rises. Here's the criteria. This second head is smaller than the great head. It is attached to the great head as it rose from it and receives its power largely. It awakens by or before 1952. It rises to world power by 1952. It will also last less than 529 years, half that of the longest empire which we saw before. It rises close to the end. It as well must protect Gog's prophecy, especially modern Israel, and it does. In its end, it disappears from world power, swallowed or devoured by the third head. How do we know this is America? Well, the intro really nailed it already, but let's look at the year in which the British Empire fell, 1952. What happened in the U.S.? World War II was over and now basically even ending in occupation. The United States Senate ratified a peace treaty with Japan, and later that year, the Treaty of San Francisco goes into effect, formally ending the occupation of Japan. So technically, completely, finally, World War II is officially completely over regarding Japan. NASA, or space travel, begins to be predicted by Wernher von Braun, who published the first in a series of articles entitled, Man Will Conquer Space Soon. Of course, the real question, did they ever go to the moon? Well, and in fact, why is there so little evidence of it? That's another topic we're not going to cover. However, let's not forget von Braun came from the enemy. He was a Nazi scientist, now heralded in the U.S. Now that's odd. Why? Well, he was still serving the same master. That didn't change. These are all the same eagle body. Remember that. The rise of the military, as Eisenhower warned. The United States Army Special Forces is created. Now this is what will become an off-book of sort operation where the public is unaware of much of what they do. The United Nations begins work in the new headquarters of the United Nations in New York City, the very infrastructure for the final empire, and essentially a one-world government being laid actually within the U.S. as well at that time already. Of course, it would as a symbol that America was the chosen second head of the eagle. It fits, as well as its tie to Gog of Magog. Of course, he would put it in his nation of power at that time. It reinforces that. See, he'll try to reunite the world just as in the Tower of Babel. And no, unity, not such a good thing, as when the world unites, every time, it does so against Yahuwah. This was the year Eisenhower was elected, even, and 8 years later, again, we saw his warning that the second eagle head was rising. Wow. More military power established. The U.S. National Security Agency is founded. Man, how much more can there be, right? Remember, this was a time of peace, largely. Yes, there was the Korean War, but that did not touch American soil, nor did World War II, really. So why? Well, this is an expansion of the military-industrial complex witnessed by Eisenhower and the next president after him. Oh, they'll be quiet after that, though, of course. And this was in the middle of the Korean War, which started a couple of years earlier. Of course, we could spend an entire video or more just on that, as who would think that splitting a country that was never split before between two opposing ideologies that were exact opposites, communism one side, capitalism the other. Who could ever think that would maybe lead to war? How could it be? This was set up to fail and basically led to war just as Vietnam was set up to do the same. These are things that erupted spontaneously? Not at all. They were set up to erupt. And who funded all of this? Well, the War Bank did. Same War Bank initially founded by the Rothschilds. The same British Empire War Bank, which moved its seat to the U.S. And remember, the Rothschilds are from Gomer, his son Ashkenaz. As well as it established the Federal Reserve, who would become the bank of war, taking interest on every dollar created from you and I. A tax before you even get the income tax, or the income. And what is truly defined even by the Founding Fathers as slavery and forbidden by the Constitution. Now, we won't cover it here, but read what they wrote about having a central bank, also about income tax, which they fought from the beginning. Read what Andrew Jackson calls his single greatest achievement, as he said, "I killed the bank." Well, in his age, he did. But the war bank would be installed with a grip that could not be loosened, especially in 1914. And what a coincidence, World War II started, same year. And the U.S. brought into it even. Again, we could spend many videos on each of these topics. We cannot, nor do we care to. We will mention this, though. The setting up of the U.S. as the superpower, basically, and we will address, by the way, Russia later as well. So let's go a little deeper. Directly from the World Bank archives. These are their words, not ours. On July 1st, 1944, as the battles of the Second World War raged in Europe and the Pacific, delegates from 44 nations met at the secluded Mount Washington Hotel in Breton Woods, New Hampshire, to participate in what became known as the Breton Woods Conference. Their purpose was to agree on a system of economic order and international cooperation that would help countries recover from the devastation of the war and foster long-term global growth. At its conclusion, the conference attendees produced the Articles of Agreement for the International Bank for Reconstruction, IBR, D, and Development, and the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. They created essentially the World Bank and the IMF that we see today. Not only did this occur in the U.S., notice, it set up the U.S. as what would become the new, even economic, superpower. America was contrived to rise as the second eagle head all along, because the true power behind all of these governments is the demon within the eagle body, Gog of Magog, and it will serve his purpose, and then it will be devoured, and that is nearing in this age. But America's beginnings are not what we are told, for it was always devised to be exactly what it had become by some. Even its name is that of controversy. We are told in history books it was named for Amerigo Vespucci. That's what I learned in school, don't know about you. And that is, well, one of the dumbest lines in the textbooks. It's ridiculous. There's no connection. However, the name America, looks like Bush didn't just talk funny. He may have actually been saying it right. Imagine that. America is the name of the god of the Americas. It means land of the plumed, feathered serpents, to the Indians of Peru. The same serpent was worshipped by the Mayans as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan. Helen Blavatsky, Theosophical Society, basically recorded this god as Amaru and the equivalent of Lucifer or Satan. Of course, they don't think Lucifer is bad, of course. They seek the soothing energies of Lucifer, in fact. Yeah, Satanists. Okay, in 1572, the last Incan leader was executed, and his name was Tupac Amaru. Yep, he was a rapper too. Teasing. Meaning the shining serpent. This is a far more likely origin of the word America, not Vespucci, who didn't do anything so monumental as deserving of basically an entire 2 continents to be named after him? I mean, what a joke, logically, yet we buy it because that's what the textbook says. It's wrong. In fact, Sir Francis Bacon, the famous British Freemason explorer, also known as Lord Chancellor of England, lawyer, statesman, philosopher, and master of the English tongue, he was a powerful Brit. From the great head of the British Empire, he dubbed America, and this tells you its purpose, as the new Atlantis. The old Atlantis was established by the 10 giant kings, Nephilim, the sons of Poseidon, the Watcher, fallen angel. Yeah, that one. It was the war machine which brought the earth to ruin before the flood. And America is the same in modern times, the continuation of the second eagle head, carrying out perpetual, forever war, offering, and this is essentially what happens, blood sacrifices to the prince demon who controls it, Gog of Magog. No nation takes innocent blood of children and escapes the wrath of Yahuwah, period. He hates war, especially what we call war today, killing innocents who have no role in war whatsoever and may even oppose their own government, but no matter, they bomb recklessly, even with so-called precision bombs, shedding much innocent blood. America was truly founded to be exactly what it has become the second head of the eagle, the continuation of the war machine, just as Atlantis, the new Atlantis. America was set up as the new superpower, even economically, not just by Bretton Woods, but this is a big one. We'll talk about Russia in a moment as well, but monetarily, not only did it become the economic power of the world after World War II as Britain diminished on the world stage, but the US dollar was installed as the petrodollar. If you wanted to purchase oil as a nation, you had to convert your nation's currency into US dollars now in order to do so. This created a demand for dollars, falsely propping up an economy that would have already collapsed long ago with all the debt and irresponsible government spending even at that point. But this is coming to an end. The petrodollar is no longer the preferred currency for purchasing oil. And what happens when the U.S. has the supply without the demand? Disaster. This has not been fully realized yet, and no politician has addressed this in the slightest. No Republican nor Democrat. This is why we see over 800 U.S. military bases in foreign countries around the world. Imagine their influence on those countries, even just in presence, whether alone their propaganda arms, etc. They apply pressure, nonetheless. In the areas where they are actively bombing, in fact, such as Afghanistan, which they've now pulled out of, leaving a vacuum and major disaster going on there right now. But again, all contrived, folks. We're watching a puppet show. The Pentagon reported in 2019 that they dropped, and this was 2019, what's that, 8 years after 9/11? In that year alone, they dropped 7,423 bombs in Afghanistan, in that one nation alone. And these wars against this new enemy of terror, well, they appear to go on and on, essentially forever wars. Why? It's all about the money. The military-industrial complex. Go back to 1961, you were warned. It must feed, just as a demon feeds on these blood sacrifices. How any American can be proud of that escapes us. Imagine roughly 200,000 U.S. troops on foreign soil. See, America doesn't call itself an empire because it has redefined the term, basically. This presence is, well, we're helping those countries defend themselves. Or we're spreading democracy, don't you know? Yet, isn't that what the Roman Empire was saying as well? That's pretty much the old claim. We are making those countries better, bringing them indoor plumbing. Not worth the cost. No, thank you. Keep your plumbing, folks. Who defends them against America? Remember, though, the eagle body includes what they call the enemies of America, largely, so we're just watching a puppet show in order to justify such expense and expansion and blood. This study from Pew Research shows a decline in manpower, but remember, they can now fly drones in those countries from the U.S., and technology has advanced to unimaginable levels in weapons that are so devastating, just the mere threat of such is enough to keep these other countries under control. I thought World War II was over, right? Then there are the economic hitmen who go in and conquer countries through debt as well. Let us also not forget, Noah mapped the earth as he divided the entire earth 3 ways between his 3 sons. We cover this in Answers and Jubilees, parts 2 through 4. Why was there a north and south divide within the U.S.? Noah put it there, as the south belongs to Ham and the north, Japheth. What we have seen in this unity is the usurping of Ham's south by Japheth, in essence. This results in a curse, according to Noah, and the U.S. is under such curse, whether it likes to hear it or not. It is not the land of the free. It is the land of slavery and conquest, and it is under a curse. It did not get where it is through old-fashioned hard work and ingenuity. It got there by enslaving Africans and those within its borders, even in ethnic cleansing of the Native Americans, taking their land. Basically taking Ham's land as well. Already, several from Ham already live there. So not just Africans. They enslaved people that were living there as well. No, it was not alone, as those were the days of the British Empire reign as well. That is Gog of Magog, and even largely the slave traders were from Gomer, Ashkenazi Jews. The pirates, even of the Caribbean and the Barbary Coast, who became such traders, in fact, mostly Jews. Even Columbus admits in his writings he wanted to secure the gold of Solomon from Ophir and Tarshish, from the land of the lost tribes of Israel, to rebuild Jerusalem for the Jews, who were not Hebrews and are not. He was an Ashkenazi Jew from Gomer, Gog's forces. And he didn't embrace what he thought were the lost tribes of Israel, his brothers, right? No. Just as he thought he landed in the Philippines, by the way. But no, what he did is he enslaved them. And he stole from them. Well, that's wonderful and brotherly. Very mighty brotherly there, Columbus. Way to go, pal. This pattern was continued by most explorers, all in tune with the same plan of Gog of Magog, to reestablish Israel under their control so their Messiah, the beast or Antichrist, could rise and rule from Jerusalem. That's why he wanted to rebuild it. That is what Revelation says, as chapter 11 even calls modern Israel, which is that installation of Gog of Magog, the same one Columbus wanted to install. Spiritual Sodom and Egypt. Some would say, what about the other superpower created by World War II, Russia? Well, we don't have time to cover the full Russian history, of course, but there is a good book called Behind Communism that everyone should check out. It details the Bolshevik Revolution was contrived by a German Ashkenazi of Gomer, Gog of Magog's ally, the son of a rabbi, Karl Marx, which we all know. He envisioned Russia as a good place to install communism, and it was the Gomerites, or Ashkenazi Jews, of Brooklyn, New York, that's the U.S., who went to Russia to lead a Wall Street-funded, Rothschild-funded, or British Empire-funded revolution, which successfully toppled the czars of Russia. A Japheth revolution, which is known to have killed as many as 50 million when in power under Stalin. Much of them were the Shemites on Shem's side of what is now part of Russia. But never should it be united into Japheth's territory. Just shouldn't. Noah's law. This nation is also under a curse from Noah violating his law. However, Russian is an antithesis installed and paid for by the great head of the British Empire and the U.S. Jacob Schiff, a Rothschild family Wall Street tycoon, largely funded this installment. It is this antithesis that was used to expand the U.S. military, and that is exactly what Eisenhower warned us about, as well as Kennedy. They saw this happening, and they, as presidents, had no control. Kennedy tried even printing money again, taking the power back, but that did not last. Again, both these topics could result in series of their own. This video is not going to go that long. So we can follow this through all the way to the iron mixed with miry clay, then the Byzantine Empire, which is the longest lasting according to Ezra, into the British Empire, which you saw last video. He nails that down in great detail, and it's really indisputable at that point. Now, it's difficult not to get this. They proved this second head rise, in fact, because all of this is really not even hidden, but right out in the open. We aren't talking about conspiracy theory here. This is not, it's demon conspiracy, of course. But yes, there are hidden powers, but they rise and the world will see them. We can firmly identify the United States as the second head, in our opinion, and we will leave this here. So let's deal with the question directly. Will America disappear? It will, just as the British Empire disappeared. Many are coming to this realization today without knowing this prophecy. But now, so much more so, we can understand what has happened as America is being dismantled. There are some major changes coming to America even still. If you live there, be aware. Live with your eyes open and understand no matter what country any of us lives in, our existence has but one purpose that matters. We are to be in relationship with Yahusha. No, not with a church or organization, but with Him. Read Matthew 7 and John 15 for Messiah's definition of this relationship he calls salvation. It's not a fragment, nor from Paul. You see, Messiah's warnings to us in Matthew 24, prepare yourself and don't get caught off guard. Consider your currency may already have no actual literal value. It is only perceived, which can change overnight. It's not backed by gold or any hard asset. America is already under the control of the prince demon Gog of Magog and has already served his purpose largely. Remember, Abraham lived in the middle of Nephilim societies, but he survived, and he served Yahuwah with all his heart, mind, and soul. That's all we got, folks. Some would say, leave America, and only you can make that decision for your household. The only safe haven we even remotely see in Scripture in the end times that we can find is the Philippines, the land of creation, and the land of the Garden of Eden. But right now, it's not easy to even get there. However, regardless, we all have Him. He can protect us, lead us, and guide us. He can see us through, even in the midst of Gog of Magog's control. The entire world is marching toward the beast, and we have entered a new era even today, one in which communism has taken over many governments in this COVID response as they are acting just as Mao, Stalin, and Hitler did largely. This should not catch any of us off guard, as we have been warned. If you are, as I was raised, a flag-waving patriot of what is referred to as a God-blessed nation, understand there is no truth in that, and the government will fall from the world scene in power, and soon, which is why we do not see America in the very end times as a world power anymore. Again, it won't cease to exist necessarily as an area, just as Britain has not and is still a nation. There will be those at the top who will transfer into this next and final head, the third head of the eagle, the final one. But America will disappear from the world stage in power, according to Ezra, who has been accurate in every detail. And that's what we're sharing here, folks. This is not our prophecy. It's his. This is astonishing, though very sad. It is time we deal with this and prepare. Thank you for watching another very serious answer in 2nd Esdras, the hidden book of prophecy indeed. Now, being restored before our eyes, and we can open our eyes and we can see. Who is the next head? What will it be? In what form will it appear? Coming soon. We hope you have gotten at least some nuggets from this answer in 2nd Esdras. We have over 300 videos on this channel, many just as profound, with some 50 or so in Tagalog for Filipinos. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications of new uploads. Join our email list as YouTube fails to notify often, and we will notify you ourselves. Just go to thegodculture.com. And friend us on Facebook at The God Culture, space original. Yah bless to everyone. In 400 BC, the prophet Ezra predicted, "For my son Yahushua shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years." Essentially, 0 BC, the era Messiah was born, and by his very name, in exactness. "After these years shall my son Messiah die, and all men that have life." The origin of John 3:16. "And the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the signs shall happen which I showed you before. And then shall my Son be declared, whom you saw as a man ascending." Even the end times are defined long before the book of Revelation. The Son of Elohim being confessed in the world. After 7 days, the world will be raised up. Mass resurrection of those who are asleep. The judgment seat. Evil will disappear. The Lion of Yehudah will consume the final empire, consuming his enemies with fire from his mouth. The lost tribes return. Every eye shall see him, handing out crowns and giving palms. The road to salvation is a narrow gate. Few are saved. The Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life are opened in the end. He is not willing that any should perish. The signs of the end times and origin of Matthew 24 in part. These are just some of the many prophecies in the book of 2nd Esdras, long before the book of Revelation was conceived. 2nd Esdras, written before John's revelation. This is the interpretation of the dream which you saw, and whereby you only are here lightened. For you have forsaken your own way, and applied your diligence unto my law, and sought it. That's Yahuwah speaking to the prophet Ezra. 2nd Esdras is dated at least 1st century BC, as it is used to interpret Habakkuk and blessing of the prince of the congregation, who is Messiah. This includes a radiocarbon dating testing as well of one fragment from 120 BC. We cover this in the introduction. This book includes 1st Esdras as well, which is also dated to the 1st century BC, when one examines what is called in fraud the Proto-Esther fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which do not remotely fit Esther, but are a match to 1st Esdras. We cover this in the introduction of this book, as well as on our YouTube videos on Esther in the original canon series. Second Esdras was quoted by Messiah according to the original authorized 1611 King James Version. Matthew 23, 37, and 38 is a direct quote from Second Esdras, which is anchored right there in the margin note as the origin of Messiah's words. For Esdras is Second Esdras, which we explain in the introduction. Yes, he quoted Second Esdras multiple times. When accurately dated, Second Esdras proves the origin of significant doctrine in the New Testament. We cover many such instances in the introduction. There is a reason why these two books remain in some Bible canons to this day. They test as inspired Scripture. Test them for yourself. Get your copy now, free in ebook. Again, this content is free. If you would like it in print, it is available on Amazon internationally and Shopee Philippines. Just go to 2esdras.org. Download the ebook and the links are there for your area.
Weren't that something now? Boy, that was some kind of good video. Anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed that, and I hope y'all get down in the description down at the bottom of my video here and subscribe to these fellers. They really deserve your support. Anyways, on that note, I hope y'all have a blessed day. You take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Oh, hey, P.S. Check out some of these here other videos too. Do me a big favor, I'd appreciate it. Ciao for now.